Sometimes you just know when you're ready for something bigger than what you have. I'm 25. I work in client services, and I've been with Jaden for 3 years. 3 whole years of the same routine, the same conversations, the same Friday night takeout orders. Don't get me wrong, Jaden's a good guy. He's stable, pays his bills on time, remembers anniversaries. But good grief. The man has zero spontaneity, zero adventure. He's perfectly content with our little bubble, planning out our future like we're checking items off some relationship to-do list. We met at Bryce's game night when I was 22 and still figuring out who I was. Jaden was 24, already acting like he had life all mapped out. He was sweet, attentive, made me laugh. We survived me finishing college, him switching companies, even 6 months of long distance when I did that internship program. Through it all, he was this constant, reliable presence, which sounds romantic, but let me tell you, constant and reliable can feel a lot like suffocating when you're trying to grow as a person. The apartment hunting was what really did it for me. There we were, looking at 2-bedroom places, talking about furniture layouts and utility bills like we were already married. Jaden would get this look in his eyes when he'd talk about our future. So certain, so settled. Meanwhile, I'm watching my single friends on social media living their best lives, traveling, dating, experiencing things, and here I am, 25 years old, acting like I'm ready to settle down forever with the first serious relationship I've ever had. I tried to bring up my concerns subtly at first. Little comments about how we were moving fast, how maybe we should slow down. But Jaden would just smile and say something about how when you know, easy for him to say. He dated around in college, had his wild phase. I'd been with exactly 3 people, including him. 3, and one of those was barely a relationship. The more I thought about it, the more trapped I felt. Not trapped by Jaden exactly, but trapped by the path we were on. Move in together, get engaged within a year, married by 27, kids by 30. It was all so predictable, so safe. And safe felt like death to me at 25. My friends didn't help. Kendall kept making jokes about how I was basically married already, and how lucky I was to have found my person so young. My sister Sienna would roll her eyes whenever I mentioned feeling restless, telling me I didn't know how good I had it. But they didn't understand. They weren't the ones staring down a future that felt predetermined. The night I finally brought it up, we were at this little taco place we'd been going to for 2 years. Same booth, same orders, same comfortable routine that was slowly killing my soul. Jaden was talking about the apartment deposit, showing me pictures of furniture on his phone, and something in me just snapped. Jaden, we need to talk. He looked up from his phone, that familiar patient expression on his face. The one that said he was ready to listen to whatever minor concern I had and solve it with his logical approach to everything. I've been thinking, I started, already feeling defensive even though he hadn't said anything yet. About us. About where we're heading. Okay, he said slowly, setting his phone down. What about it? I'm 25. I've only been with 3 people, including you. I feel like I'm missing out on experiences. I'm too young to be tied down like this. The change in his expression was immediate. Not angry exactly, but something harder than his usual understanding look. Tied down? We're moving in together. Not getting married tomorrow. But that's the path we're on, right? Move in, get engaged, married, kids, the whole thing. And I need to explore my options, see what else is out there. The silence stretched between us. Jaden put his fork down carefully, like he was trying to control his movements. So you want to break up to date around? When he said it like that, it sounded shallow. But that wasn't what this was about. This was about personal growth. About not wondering what if for the rest of my life. Look, we can stay friends, and who knows? Maybe after I've had some experiences, we can reconnect. You're definitely husband material. Jaden, just not yet. I reached for his hand, but he pulled it back like I'd burned him. Husband material. He repeated, not yet. Don't make it sound weird. I'm just being practical. I need to get this out of my system first. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him processing everything. This was Jaden. He'd think it through, see the logic in what I was saying, maybe even appreciate my maturity in recognizing what I needed. Paige, he said finally, his voice different than I'd ever heard it. If you leave to explore, we're done permanently. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Don't be dramatic. People take breaks all the time. This isn't some soap opera. You're ending a 3-year relationship to sleep around. That's not taking a break. That's not what I'm doing, I said, though heat rose in my cheeks. I mean, look, I know you're upset, but you'll understand eventually. We're meant to be together. I just need to get this out of my system first. He stood up then. Threw cash on the table, just his half. I noticed and looked down at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Explore away. Page. Hope you find what you're looking for. And then he left. Just walked out and left me sitting there with my mouth hanging open. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, expecting him to come back. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be upset. Sure. But then he was supposed to understand. We were supposed to have a mature conversation about taking space while maintaining our connection. Instead, I had to pay for my own dinner and drive home alone to find that he'd already blocked me on everything. Facebook, Instagram, even Snapchat. Like I was some crazy ex instead of someone he'd been planning a future with just hours before. The blocking felt like such an overreaction. I wasn't asking to disappear forever. I was asking for space to grow. But Jaden always had been a little dramatic when he didn't get his way. The first few weeks were exactly what I needed. I updated my dating profiles, went out with friends, started meeting new people. The attention was intoxicating after 3 years of relationship routine. Different guys, different conversations, different experiences. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in months. But by the second month, something started feeling off. Not the dating, that was still fun, but the little things. Coming home to an empty apartment with no one to share my day with. No inside jokes. No comfortable silences. No one who knew exactly how I like my coffee in the morning. I started asking mutual friends about Jaden. Casual questions. Nothing obvious. Bryce mentioned he'd joined some recreational sports league. Kendall said she'd seen him at a coffee shop looking really good, actually. Which annoyed me more than it should have. Of course he looked good. He'd always been attractive. That wasn't the point. The point was that he seemed fine. More than fine. He seemed like he was thriving without me. And that wasn't part of the plan. I started driving by places I knew he went. The coffee shop near his work. The grocery store he preferred. The bookstore where he spent Saturday mornings. Just to see how he was doing. You know, to gauge whether he missed me as much as I was starting to miss him. The third time I accidentally ran into him at the bookstore. He didn't even seem surprised. Pretty high odds, since you know my routine. He said when I acted shocked to see him. I shop here too. I protested. Though we both knew I'd always preferred the bigger chain stores. Since when? You used to say their coffee smelled burnt. People change, I said, grabbing a random book from the shelf. Exactly, he replied, and something in his tone made me look up, but he was already walking away. That night, I found myself scrolling through social media, looking for any trace of him. He'd been thorough with the blocking, but I could still see him in other people's posts sometimes. Group photos where he looked relaxed and happy. Comments on mutual friends' posts that showed he was still his usual thoughtful self. It bothered me more than I wanted to admit. This was supposed to be temporary. He was supposed to miss me, to realize what he'd lost. Instead, he seemed to be moving on like our 3 years together meant nothings. By month 4, the dating scene was losing its appeal. The conversations felt repetitive. The guys seemed immature compared to what I'd had with Jaden. I found myself comparing everyone to him, their sense of humor, their reliability, their way of making me feel safe and cherished. The realization hit me gradually. Then all at once, I was ready to come home. I'd had my experiences, learned what I needed to learn, and confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Jaden was special. What we had was special. I'd gotten the exploration out of my system, and now I was ready for the real thing. I spent weeks planning what I'd say to him, how I'd explain that this had all been necessary for my personal growth, that I was now ready to appreciate what we had. I'd matured, gained perspective, and could now commit fully to our future together. The night I finally worked up the courage, I drove to his apartment building. I'd been there so many times before, knew exactly which window was his, could see the warm light that meant he was home. I waited by his door, wearing the old college sweatshirt of his I'd kept, something to remind him of our connection, our shared history. When he came home from wherever he'd been, he stopped short when he saw me. "We need to talk," I said, standing up from where I'd been sitting against his door. "No, we don't," he replied, fishing his keys out of his pocket. "Please, Jaden." 5 minutes. He paused, key halfway to the lock. "You had 3 years? You traded them for 6 months of exploration. How'd that work out?" The casual cruelty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the Jaden I knew. Patient, understanding, willing to talk through anything. "I made a mistake," I said, and the words felt foreign in my mouth. "I explored, I dated, I had my experiences, and you know what? I learned that you're the one I want." He actually laughed, not the warm laugh I remembered, but something cold and sharp. "You're the one I want now? After you've test-driven every other option. How flattering. That's not fair." "Fair," You literally told me I was husband material you wanted to save for later. Like I'd just be sitting on a shelf waiting for you to finish shopping around. I thought you would wait. We had 3 years together. Had, past tense. The finality in his voice made something twist in my chest. This wasn't going at all like I'd imagined. You're ending things just to spite me. You want to punish me for being honest about what I needed. Paige, I'm seeing someone. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually took a step back, my hand going to my chest. What? Who? For how long? Doesn't matter. What matters is I moved on. Like you wanted, I didn't want you to move on. I wanted you to be there when I came back. There it was. The truth I hadn't even admitted to myself. I'd expected him to wait, to miss me so much that when I was ready to come back, he'd be grateful, relieved, ready to pick up where we left off. Go home. Paige. But I couldn't. Not like this. Not when everything was going wrong. I'll wait, I said, sitting back down by his door. You'll realize we're meant to be together. He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. Hi, this is Jaden Walsh in 4B. I have my ex-girlfriend outside my door refusing to leave. Yes, I've asked her to go. Thank you. Security arrived within minutes. 2 guys who were polite but firm, escorting me to the elevator while I tried to explain that this was all a misunderstanding. That Jaden and I just needed to talk. That we had history. That this was about true love and second chances. But they weren't interested in my explanations. They just wanted me gone. The next day, I tried a different approach. I knew where he worked. Had picked him up there enough times. I told the receptionist I was his girlfriend and needed to drop off his lunch, holding up a bag from the sandwich place we used to go to. But when security called him down, he took one look at me and said, "She's my ex. Please remove her." The humiliation of being escorted out in front of his coworkers was almost unbearable. But what was worse was the way he looked at me, like I was a stranger, like our 3 years meant nothing. I sent flowers to his office. Huge, expensive arrangements with cards that referenced our inside jokes, our shared memories, but apparently, he just gave them away to other people in his building. When the subtle approach wasn't working, I got creative with social media, new accounts, comments on old posts, messages through mutual friends. I wrote this long Instagram post about losing the love of your life to pride, about how sometimes the person you're meant to be with gets scared and runs. I didn't mention names, but anyone who knew us would understand. My friends started sending me screenshots of people's reactions. Some were supportive, but others seemed to think I was being dramatic, that I'd brought this on myself. The breaking point came when I decided to call his mother, Mrs. Walsh had always liked me, had made comments about how perfect we were together. Surely she could talk some sense into him. But when I called, crying about how Jaden wouldn't forgive me for some fight, she listened quietly and then said, "Oh, hell no. I like you, sweetie, but hell no." Apparently, Jaden had told her everything. About the breakup, about my reasons, about what I'd expected from him. And instead of being on my side, she was on his. When my own mother called me the next day, furious about how I was destroying myself over some boy who clearly wasn't worth it, I realized how far things had spiraled. But I couldn't stop. Every day that passed without resolution felt like losing him more completely. I left voicemails on his phone from different numbers, drove by his apartment at night to see if his lights were on, even followed him to a restaurant one evening. That's where I met her, Harper. The woman he was seeing, she was nothing special. Really blonde, average height, the kind of girl you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting. But there she was, sitting across from my Jaden in our booth at our restaurant, laughing at his jokes like she had any right to them. When I walked over to their table, the look on her face was priceless. Pure shock, like she couldn't believe someone would dare interrupt their little date. "Jaden, what a coincidence," I said, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "You need to leave," he said immediately. I looked at Harper, smiled my sweetest smile. "Oh, I'm Paige, Jaden's girlfriend." "Well, ex, but not for long." The girl actually laughed. "Lady, I don't know what your deal is, but this is just sad." "Sad?" This basic nobody was calling me sad. "You don't know anything about us?" I said, my smile getting tighter. "I know he blocked you. I know you've been harassing him. I know you're about 3 seconds from getting arrested if you don't leave." The audacity. This random woman, who'd known him for what? A few weeks maybe? Thinking she could speak to me like that? Like she understood what Jaden and I had built together. When I reached for Jaden's phone to delete her number or something, I wasn't really thinking clearly. My hand knocked over her wine glass. Red wine went everywhere, all over her white shirt. The manager appeared immediately, asking me to leave. When I refused, explaining that this was my boyfriend and we just needed to work things out. He called the police. The cops treated me like I was some kind of criminal instead of a woman fighting for her relationship. They took statements from everyone. The manager, other customers, even Harper with her stained shirt acting like I'd attacked her. They didn't arrest me, but they gave me some warning about not coming back to the restaurant and strongly suggested I leave Jaden alone. As they walked me to my car, I called back to him. This isn't over. Jaden, we're meant to be together. But he just stood there next to her, watching me get escorted away like I was nothing to him. The restraining order papers arrived a week later. Court day was a nightmare. I dressed conservatively, hoping to show the judge that I was a reasonable person caught up in an emotional situation. My mom hired me a lawyer who seemed more interested in his phone than my case. Jaden showed up with a folder thick with evidence. Screenshots, voicemails, witness statements. He'd been documenting everything, building a case against me like I was some kind of stalker instead of someone who loved him. The judge listened to everything with this cold, disapproving expression. When my lawyer tried to explain that I was just seeking closure, she cut him off. Counselor, did you review the evidence? Specifically the voicemail where your client says, and I quote, I can see your light on. I asked to speak for myself. Against my lawyer's advice? Your Honor, Jaden and I had 3 beautiful years together. I made one mistake. I asked for space to grow as a person, and now he's punishing me for it. You ended the relationship to, in your words, explore your options? Yes. But, and Mr. Walsh told you this would be permanent. He was upset. He didn't mean it. The judge looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Ma'am, you're 25 years old enough to understand consequences. You ended a relationship. He accepted it and moved on. Your refusal to accept his decision has led to stalking, harassment, and assault. I didn't assault anyone. You knocked over a glass while attempting to grab his phone after following him to a restaurant while he was on a date. When she put it like that, it sounded worse than it was. I just wanted him back. Is that a crime? The stalking and harassment. Actually, yes. 2 years. No contact. Stay 500 feet away. The whole thing. As we left the courthouse, my mom cornered Jaden in the parking lot, demanding to know if he was happy now that he'd humiliated me and destroyed my reputation. His response was cold as ice. Mrs. Patterson. Paige did this to herself. That was 8 months ago now. The restraining order is still in effect, and apparently, it's working. I haven't heard anything from him since. I lost my job a few weeks after the court date. Turns out missing work to stalk your ex-boyfriend doesn't impress supervisors. My social media is filled with motivational quotes about surviving toxic relationships and rising from the ashes, though I'm not sure anyone's buying it. Kendall tried reaching out through a mutual friend recently, saying I should know that Jaden is doing really well, and that maybe someday I could consider apologizing. But why should I apologize for loving someone too much? For fighting for what we had? The truth is, if Jaden had just broken up with me normally, said he wasn't feeling it anymore, wanted different things, I would have been hurt. But I would have understood. People grow apart. It happens, but the way he handled it, like I was disposable the moment I wasn't convenient for him anymore. Like our 3 years meant nothing the second I needed space to figure myself out. That showed me who he really was. Someone who could throw away love the moment it required any effort or patience. Looking back, there were signs. The way he always had to be right in arguments. How he made decisions about our future without really asking what I wanted. How he acted like he was doing me a favor by dating me. Like I should be grateful he'd chosen me. He never saw me as an equal partner. I was just an accessory to his perfect life plan. Something he could put away when I stopped being convenient. Well, this accessory walked herself right out of his life. And if he wants to play the victim, let him. I know what we had was real, even if he's too proud to admit it. Some people just can't handle real love when it gets complicated. They want everything easy, everything on their terms. Jaden got exactly what he deserved. A basic, boring relationship with someone who'll never challenge him to grow. And me, I'm doing fine. Better than fine. I learned who I really am. What I'm capable of fighting for. That's worth more than any relationship with someone too weak to fight for what we had.